One unspoken truth about the big project is that some of them are driven by the big companies, and it's only open development in the sense that you're seeing how it's being evolved, but not necessarily open contribution. Advocacy for your own projects is as important as the quality of projects themselves. I've seen many projects that were killed despite being technically accomplished because
Hey, welcome to developersindev.com. This is the full interview with Paco, Esteve, Senior Software Engineer at Facebook. I hope you really enjoyed the 360 interview. In this interview, we are gonna dive deep, really deep on Paco's profile from a lot of different angles. Tips for junior engineers, open source, public speaking. We will cover a lot of topics in this very deep and very dense interview. So hope you like it. If you want us to keep producing this type of content, please consider donating. That will help us a lot. Just make sure that you subscribe to Developers in Dev, you share this with your friends, and you keep rocking. So, let's get started. He's working at Facebook. Before that, he was doing a lot of Android development tools. He loves open source, programming languages, like Paco is everywhere. And also, you love public speaking. So I think it's a very interesting personality to interview today. So let's get started. So Paco, please, can you introduce to the audience who you are, where you come from?
Yeah, so I'm a Spanish guy. I come from a small town in rural Spain, and I've been working at Facebook for the last couple of years. Before that, I did a bit of Android development, and my passion is actually like programming languages and development tooling and getting all people's productivity up.
Cool. So what are your responsibilities as a software engineer at Facebook?
So as a software engineer, what you want to do is delivering the most value, the most impact that is possible within your domain, right? So you have to make sure that you're always providing the best view, the best oversight, and you're interactive with your environment and with the product in a way that is giving your customers the most out of it.
Cool, so now we have like a little bit of overview of yourself. So let's transition more about tips and lessons learned for junior engineers. What were the biggest mistakes in your career so far? Those things that you learned a lot about it, but you could say, if I could start again, probably I would do it different.
So the first one is you have to do the work. Doesn't matter who you're talking to, what they did. Nobody just showed up one morning and they knew about these things. So it requires a day-to-day constant learning, keeping up to date. And it's not only keeping up to date to frameworks, it's actually refreshing the things that you learn in university. So you're keeping productive. It also means keeping up with the parts of the product that are important. And some of the biggest mistakes that you can make is make everything around you, around the technology or around the things that you believe really strongly that are really important. You have to drive this change, you have to drive these initiatives, but you also have to be open to others' opinions. And I failed that myself, and I've met many people that have had the same problem. So getting over that first bump is a sign of maturity that we see, that we try to find in other people. Being able to defend their positions, but also be flexible to change.
Cool. So we talked before starting the interview about, companies like Amazon, Facebook, or big companies in general. It's something that everybody can try to work hard to get into those places. At least in Spain, we have seen many people that are kind of like afraid to jump into this kind of opportunity just because they think they are not good enough or they are not prepared enough. What do you think is your advice to those people that are not sure where they can go?
Yeah, so university is a great chance because if things go accordingly to life plan, it would be the last time when you have free time to work on your own things. So university has an approach where you're allowed to take exams and continue doing your exercises, but also you have enough free time that you can work on the things that you find are interesting to you or can provide additional value. So one of the possibilities that is open for you is to study, to pass those first interviews, to do an internship in one of those big companies. And that possibility is available for everybody. We have people coming from all around the world they just show up, speak about the things that they are passionate about, the things that they technically know, they prepare for these interviews, they study the same as you would for a set of exams. And once you pass, you're in. You're having a 3 months project, You're going to be interacting with some of the best people in the industry, and it doesn't matter what your background. I personally myself, I come from a small town from Spain, and I also didn't go to the best university, didn't have the best class or the best grades or anything. It was just a case of sitting down and doing the work.
So what do you think that was key for you? So yeah, sitting down and doing the work, but what do you think were key for you in order to grow professionally till reach one of the biggest companies now?
So it was about day-to-day learning, right? I enjoy reading, I enjoy watching talks, and I decided to go more towards a foundational approach rather than a framework. So you're always going to be able to do some UI, regardless whether it's a web or it is an iOS device or you know, any other mobile applications, or you can do backend and you're going to be able to do services regardless of the language because they are based on the same principles. So you have to be learning those principles and how to apply and how to increase your productivity based on those core ideas. You're not going to be reinventing the wheel. You want to know what other people are doing. You're going to take that thing into your day-to-day and try to be the best out of them. So it's not about what you can produce, it's also what you can steal, right? It's the old saying about artists. The best artists, you know, the bad artists just produce, the worst artists copy, the best just steal.
Yeah, I really like the idea that you mentioned before, that it's just not about learning specific frameworks, it's the foundation that will help you in your career later on. That's really interesting. So you mentioned, like, we were talking basically on really cool companies. What do you think, in the contrary, are those places that you would like to avoid for your first jobs?
Correct. What I found in my first internship was that they were not giving me the mentorship that I needed. So you need to have somebody that in the company, whether it's a senior engineer or even another junior engineer that just went through this process 6 months ago, to teach you through the ropes of day-to-day development. So when you come from university, you have these vague ideas of what day-to-day software development is. We're getting better at teaching you, but still your first day is going to be thrilling, the first week is going to be incredible, and the first month is going to be like a huge slow. And if you have somebody that is giving you advice that has gone through that, especially if it's been recently, it's a bi-directional thing that is going to help you. So if you're starting a company and you see you have a new junior, there's a good chance you can relate to them better than the senior engineer that has been doing software for 15 years, because they already know how to solve all of the problems and they know all the problem space. Whereas for the first day, you're just focusing on how do I run the debugger, how do I set up my things, how can I, you know, get my environment working, what is a productive loop for day-to-day development, what is a test, how do I run them? And that information may not come from university. So getting a company that teaches you this thing is the most important thing. Once you have that foundation, you can go everywhere.
Cool. So let's talk more about the mentorship part. So what do you think is key in order to, like, what kind of exercises do you normally do when you are mentoring people, and what do you think is key in order to have a very successful mentor-mentee relationship?
This approach depends on your own personality. Myself, I trust in people. I believe that they are able to do things, and sometimes I prefer to send them to the deep end of the pool and just watch and see whether they can do it. And whenever you think that they're gonna be blocked, you just go in there, just surgically find the place where you want to improve. It's like, hey, try this approach, or maybe you should consider this other direction. That kind of thing is always helpful for them. So it is really important to have trust on your mentee. It's important to be available, but not necessarily on top of them. Be direct on the things that you ask, but not be directive in micromanaging the things that they do. And finally, just try for everybody to enjoy the experience, because if they come out of it very stressed, it's not going to last. They're going to associate that exercise of programming, of pairing and everything with pain, or with like, oh, this being really harsh on me, or the expectations are really high. And it's not about that. It's about getting that person to do that first step.
Yeah. So for me, at least, when you jump into a new company, sometimes can be really overwhelming when you see like millions of lines of code and you see very big code bases. What is kind of your approach when you jump into a new team in a new code base and say, I don't know anything about this code? How do you jump into the...
Yeah. So the first instinct, at least the one that I used to have, is, okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to read through all the code base and I'm going to understand what it does. And that is somewhat unproductive because you don't know the starting pointers. So at that point, what you're gonna do is you're gonna lock out your calendar and you're gonna spend the next couple of weeks pairing with people. You're gonna nag your colleagues for them to give you the information that you need because they know where to look for, they know the pitfalls and they know the things that go wrong. And maybe it's not all of them that can teach you everything about anything at all, but you can find the person that is willing to do that extra step, and your company has to give you that. If there's no mentorship involved in the company, everybody's gonna have a bad time because everybody's gonna be siloed and there's not enough collaboration. So what you want is to find those people, for them to tell you what parts of the code base are important, what are the first tasks that you have to do, and those first tasks cannot come from your own knowledge of the code base because it's fragmented. It has to come from people that have prepared those for you. And that's something that big companies are really good at, creating tasks that are self-contained and people that are driving them, and they are supposed to be doing at least the same amount of work that they would be if they were doing it themselves, but the other people have to do it. So this is also something that we do in open source. For example, in the Arrow project that I work on, we have a set of tasks that are labeled as noob friendly. Noob is not the best word, but it's the one that we use. So they're called noob friendly, and they are meant for somebody that actually comes from the code base and it doesn't know anything at all. There are things that for us, it would be like 5 minutes, but we don't want to do every single thing that takes 5 minutes because the next time somebody wants to start contributing, they are not going to do the hard tickets. We want them to do the small things. Maybe there's an API fix here, maybe there's one function that we can add there, maybe there's some documentation that we can include for a simple part of the code base. And it's better if we don't do those. It's better if people that want to ramp up in the project do. And we have had many contributors coming from that. People that say, oh, this is an easy ticket, this is my first time doing open source work. We teach them, we show them how to build, how to do everything, and they do it. Again, it's a slower process than if we were to do it ourselves, but from that, we got a bunch of people involved as contributors, as part-time contributors, just because they were able to do that first step and they felt confident about themselves.
Mm-hmm. So basically we talk about like two different parts. We were talking about code base, we were talking about mentorship. Now let's talk about the team itself. So especially when you jump into a new team, what are the biggest mistakes that you have observed junior or even like senior people do when it comes to collaboration, communication, earning trust of their colleagues?
So the first one is a cliche from the old movies, right? It's your first day on the team and you have to be the toughest guy around, so you have to find the biggest target that you want and you punch them. And you punch them through a code review or something like that, and you get very, strong opinions about things. And the only thing that you're doing is showing that you're not ready yet to take some of those responsibilities for the team. So you're coming here, you're a newcomer, you come from a code base that probably has had many problems and a long history and many revisions, and people have come and gone, and again, it's not about you. It's about the collaboration that you can do in the code base. So don't make that mistake of saying, hey, it's my first day, everything is shit, everything is gonna be shit forever, and I'm here to fix everything, because there's probably a good reason why things are shit.
The hero.
Exactly.
The hero kind of mechanism.
And then trust is earned. So for the first weeks, months, even a year, maybe too much, but maybe a year, you have to build trust in the things that you do and the stuff that you're capable of doing. So you can show that through your work, but you don't necessarily have to put everybody else down, or you have to go and refactor. This is about, okay, I know that this could be an improvement for the code base. It's not changing the core of itself, it's this addition that I'm doing, or that I can talk to these people and make sure that we understand what the problems are, or there are these bugs that I can fix individually, and you're providing that additional value. And once you've gained that trust, that you understand the code base well, that you're relating well to your customers, that you're interacting with your colleagues well and everything, that's when you can start pushing for those bigger projects of let's refactor this, I think this class can be split down, I believe we can build this new functionality only if we fix these other things around.
Cool. So you have been working with lots of junior engineers. So now let's focus more on the practical aspects of the collaboration. What have you observed that are the key values, skills, attitudes that any junior engineer, and you can generalize if you want for any engineer in the world, should have in order to make sure that they can advance their career and they can go to the next steps?
Yeah. So maybe there's a little bit of projection here, but I think tenacity is the best one. you're going to be faced with many adversities through career, and some of them may came from yourself, from the environment, from the project, from the colleagues and everything else, and you have to push through them because that's part of the day-to-day. Coding, it is one of the parts of your day-to-day development. When you're a junior, most of your day is going to be coding. As you progress through the experience levels, your day-to-day is going to be less about coding because you're going to be able to do more things, and it's going to be more about the interactions that you have with all the people, with the rest of your teammates, and the projects that you're driving. And a project that you're driving, it will be very rare that you're just sitting down by yourself in the corner just coding this thing and you show up one day like the Messiah just coming down from the skies with a new API. Nobody's going to buy that API. It doesn't matter how much your rapport is or the stuff that you did before. You have to start doing interactions first. That's what the really well-known engineers do. They're good at getting other people buying into the projects that they're doing more than the projects themselves. And sometimes it's not about the lines of code that they put out or the smartest 1% solution that they did. It's because they made other people believe what their project was able to do, and they were able to show those people the kind of stuff that they were doing. So even within your own company, advocacy for your own projects is as important as the quality of projects themselves. I've seen many projects that were killed despite being technically accomplished because they were not able to get enough traction. So you have to work on that, and especially if you're in tooling or you're in infrastructure, this is part of your job.
So tenacity, and also making sure that you can persuade people and convince them about what you're doing. So something that I especially like about your profile and your website is that you said, Paco will not stop learning.
Yes.
And I really love that idea. And learning for computer science is really key. But how do you actually learn? What's your strategies when it comes to learn new technologies?
So normally my first approach would be seeing what the community is and what are the main talks, the things that they consider a cornerstone, right? And wherever you go, you can find probably the first React talk in 2014 or something like that, or you can go into functional programming and find the F# for fun and profit talks, or you can go into, I don't know, I like new topics in programming languages. You can find guys still talking how to grow a language and things like that. So you find these big level talks, and then you find the people that have dissected those concepts, and maybe they have made them into books or into papers or into websites or things like that. And you start pulling the thread from that. You may not get that first big talk because there's foundational, and maybe those foundations are not available to you. So you have to start picking each one of the pieces apart until you figure out the big picture. And then at some point, and this is something that I really love, is you have to start explaining it to other people, which requires really good understanding, because if I want to explain you something, I have to understand it first myself. For me to do that first step and explain something in a way that other people can understand requires a lot of understanding of the principal concepts, and that forces you to go through them and to prepare them and to reduce them down into a format that may fit on a talk, may fit on a book, on a blog post or something else. And that's really hard. That's a really good skill. A really good skill is being able to have convey a lot of meaning in a really short amount of text, and I'm really bad at that. I'm really good at talking a lot. I'm really good at info dumps. And if you go to my talks, I give the same kind of talk that I actually like to watch, which is the one where you're not gonna understand much at that point in time, but your interest is gonna be piqued, and you're gonna go home and you're gonna do homework on top of it.
So now let's talk more about what's happened when you start working in those environments. You're ready, you have the knowledge, you have the right mindset and the skills, and it comes to choose in which kind of part of the balance do you want to be, whether working on customer-facing features or whether working more on development tools, infrastructure. So you have been in both sides of the balance. So for you, what are the main differences between both, and why right now do you enjoy most to work more on the tooling?
So there's a whole spectrum there, right? If you're working on customer-facing things, there's a possibility that you're actually working on the back-end parts of it, and that's still working on product. And you have to be focused on those things. Whereas you could be somebody that is really deep into optimizing VMs and getting that 1% extra performance from databases, or maybe making your AWS bill $100,000 cheaper. And that really comes with your interest, the things that are really important to you. So for some people, it is important that their work is seen by 100 million people, and they have to push this, front and center tab. I wrote this, my family is proud, the UI looks beautiful and the user can understand and move these things. Whereas for other people, that just means, hey, I was able to save the company this amount of money, or I was able to drive this big initiative so everybody writes code in a way that aligns more with the way that I think, or maybe that our testing infrastructure was not good enough, and I believe. So it is all about ownership, about what you feel passionate, what you think you can do end to end, and you just have to pick the one that piques your interest. This, of course, has a lot of variation from company to company, but there's always a possibility of ramping up on these other technologies. It's just a case of what gives you that spark, that extra thing, and just pursuing it. And I believe that in many occasions that is already a possibility. If not, there's always the possibility of feeling proud about what you do. I think that's at the core level. You have to feel proud, you have to feel accomplished on your job. And even if that accomplishment doesn't come from the job itself, it's about the things that you're providing, that you're taking home, that's also okay. Don't overthink it, just produce the best thing that you can do, that you can provide at that time, and hope for the best.
So now let's face to the last part of the interview.
Yes.
So we will, I will ask you a couple of questions related with public speaking and also open source.
Got it.
First of all, what open source means for you?
For me, open source is a possibility of giving back. So when I came out from university, when I was starting, I knew very little. And the mentorship on my first couple of jobs, as I told you, wasn't that great. So I have to start learning by myself. How did I do it? I did it through open source. I did it through people who did talks. I did it through blog posts and everything else. And when I reached a point when I thought I could be showing people the ways that I think, or the ways that I think other people are using, and the things that I can just bring in, that's when I started doing open source. It was a way of giving back. For me, when I do open source, it's a way of giving back into the community, into the people that took me to the place where I am right now, and teaching other people and getting these relationships and being able to form a core group of like people that you know within the industry, and knowing that you can go to, I don't know, Seattle or San Francisco, and even in the middle of the States, and you're gonna find somebody that is a friend that you have common things with, that you've gone through the same problems, and they learn from you, maybe you learn from them. That is invaluable for me.
That's awesome. So it's interesting because I've seen many people, especially computer science students, that struggle to contribute to open source, or even they are afraid to publish their projects on GitHub just because they think they're not good enough, and they feel this kind of social pressure.
Yeah.
But what do you think is key in order to overcome that fear and also start contributing to open source projects? Where to start and how to overcome that fear?
So I gave a talk a couple of years ago about how to get started in open source, and for me the key concept is that you have to get over yourself, in the sense that there's nobody out there that is coming from you. So when I was starting, I had that same kind of fear. So for me, the breakthrough was one hackathon that I did. It was called Ludum Dare. It was making a game over a weekend. And at the beginning, I was really slow developing any kind of program. And in this, I was capable of, within a weekend, getting something on the screen that was able to move and it was able to shoot. And I thought, oh my God, I can do in one weekend, I can do this small game, which means I can make libraries, or I can make small things that are self-contained to a weekend. And it doesn't have to be this big, large project that I have to contribute to. So I started doing that over the next year or so. I started doing small libraries that take maybe 1 weekend or 2 weekends to do, that are really easy to reproduce, that you can publish, for example, in NPM or Cargo or maybe Jetpack, these kind of companies that make it really easy to publish those libraries. And once they are published, nobody came to me and said, oh, your code is bad, this stuff is not good enough. People were actually empowering, saying, hey, I enjoy the stuff that you did, or maybe it's not for my company, but I appreciate that you went and did it. What is more difficult is if you try to get into the big projects, because one unspoken truth about the big project is that some of them are driven by the big companies, and it's only open development in the sense that you're seeing how it's being evolved, but not necessarily open contribution. So if you try to put something into Unix kernel, there's a good chance Linus is going to be mean at you because he has this foundation in this big thing that is going forward. Or if you try to contribute to React, you're going to get reviewed within that big company. So it's open development, but not necessarily open source in the sense of collaboration. So you can can find some of those projects that are actually completely community driven, and they are seriously, I found so many projects that just want to take people in, run them up, and just continue adding these things, because we are so stuffed in the number of engineers that are required for all the projects that we have in the world. So just find your own corner with people that you can trust, with people that you can rely, and start contributing that. It doesn't matter if the project is the next big thing or it's a small thing that is just a group of friends. The point is, you're just doing this because you're enjoying it, or because it's giving you this extra value or this nice fuzzy feeling.
How to find that passion? Like, how to find those projects that you're really interested in and you want to contribute to?
So sometimes it's not even about the project, it's maybe about the technology, or it's about the people that you're interacting with. So maybe you find somebody that you like from Twitter, from open source. There's a good chance they have a small project going, and maybe you want to take it over, or maybe you want to add that additional things. Maybe it's just a group of friends, or maybe you want to learn Rust and you find a Rust project that has put a call to arms to fix some of the issues or something like that. And there's always Gitter channels, there's always like open source bounties, there's job boards for open source that you can Google for, and each one of them is going to have at least one. Don't do it because you're feeling pressure or because it's going to make your CV. Just do it because you're enjoying collaborating with other people. You can take this as if you were playing a game together. So you're solving a puzzle game together collaboratively. When you're just using GitHub to send out the solution to each other, it's like, oh, I found a way of doing this a 10% better. Oh, but I found a better API that can do this. And you can continue challenging. So finding that kind of people that you have that kind of interaction, even if it's with somebody that it's at your same level, is going to help you level up a lot.
Let's talk about the people for this last part of about open source. From the outside, I haven't done much open source. I've done a couple of that, but I've seen that communities, collaboration, communication is key. It's really essential in work, but especially in open source when you don't know anyone and you need to jump into those communities. What do you think are the most common errors when it comes to start talking with other people, or even your tone and the way you describe your code reviews or your pull requests? Like, what do you think is essential in order to start earning trust of the community itself?
So you're gonna find this funny. We discussed this about how you want to interact with teams within your company. Open source is a really good way of experimenting with that same thing. So you're moving into a project that is already established, people have knowledge of, they may be busy with their own things and everything else. And it's exactly the same thing. You can experiment, try to see, oh, I'm contributing with fixes, I'm adding this thing, I'm adding this feature, and maybe when they start trusting you, you can start driving these big initiatives. For me, open source has been a way of leveling up these skills that later I apply to my day-to-day job. And the same kind of drama and the same kind of concerns of way that people collide or collaborate or contribute is going to show up in open source projects. It's the same kind of people problem that you find.
And for you right now, what are the projects that excite you most in the community?
So because I like programming languages, I want the same toolset that you find in new programming languages such as Rust, such as Hack, such as Swift, to appear in all the languages that I work on. So for, right now we are creating a library that brings those functional concepts from these new languages into Kotlin, for example, which is like a better version of Java for Android development and for backend development. So we've been working for this for a couple of years. We've been bringing people in. We've absorbed a couple of projects. We have mentored many people, and we're always willing to take somebody else. Like for example, yesterday we had the chance to have a chat with two women that were based in San Francisco that wanted to start contributing to the docs. So anybody that comes to us, we're really glad, and we're super happy to start doing it. And if you want to learn a little bit more about functional programming for any programming languages, we're also giving mentorship about that, even if it's just starting with the Kotlin, but we can also do Scala, we can do Haskell, we can do F#, we can do OCaml or anything else, because people in the project have those backgrounds, so we can teach you.
Arrow.
Yeah.
Check it out. Let's talk briefly, just one question related to functional programming. Because you are a big lover of that and you have done a lot of talks, what do you think functional programming has improved you as an engineer? What do you think the functional programming has teach you along the way?
So when I did object-oriented programming, one of the big promises was reusable abstractions. My experience with it, that was not the reality. There was a lot of repetition and the patterns were not necessarily reusable. You have to re-implement them many times. Whereas when I went to functional programming, I understood the same core foundations were available across languages and across frameworks. And to the point where those frameworks are built within the same foundations. So I can contribute to open source projects without knowing much about the code, just saying, hey, have you considered that if you're jumping threads and you have to do synchronization, you require to do these approaches and those things. So for me, it was about foundational learning that allowed me to move into different concepts. And even I could apply some of those to object-oriented programming because I could see the same patterns repeating. So I could just bring that back, basically.
Cool. So now let's talk more about public speaking as the last part of that. So I think for me, one of the barriers to start public speaking is fears.
Yeah.
Fears of not being, again, good enough, or how to talk in front of a crowd. How did you overcome those fears?
So same as with open source, people are not out there to get you. They are not there to insult you. They're not going to throw tomatoes. You're just presenting your vision of software development, your vision of a project to the wider community, and you're adding value. Even if some people think that you're wrong and the core things that you're showing, that is not relevant because you're just providing the information that you already know. And that fear kind of goes away over time, over the first five or 10 talks. Of course, 5 minutes before each one of them, you think you're just gonna make a mistake and everything is gonna come over you. But even if you make those mistakes, people are there to forgive you because they are there to learn about the things that you know. So if your setup breaks, if your live coding doesn't compile, if your slides are out of order, if you couldn't sleep last night and you look like poorly, people are not gonna remember that. They're gonna remember the things that you did for it. And the worst feedback that I got, it was always around like, oh, this talk was too high level, too difficult, or oh, this blew my mind and you shouldn't have done that. It's like, I gave the talk that I wanted to give. I wanted the level to be that. I want you to go home and be angry at me and just learn about these things, and I'm completely okay. And you deal with that feedback and nothing really bad happened. And I've met many other speakers that had that same problem first time, second time, third time, and nobody has ever told me somebody threw a tomato at me. Worst case, you get that guy in the talk in a conference, and I've been that guy sometimes, and you try not to be that guy, but everybody knows that guy, and that's it. And you ignore that guy because everybody that is around you and everybody that is speaking and everybody that is attending know that person is numb.
So I really like the idea of what you said, like be comfortable on the things that you are gonna say, be set. This is the level that I want to share and all that stuff. I would add to that for me it's really important to be empathic with the people. So empathic in the sense, who is my target audience? What is kind of the level that they may have? Because otherwise, how do you adapt exactly like your knowledge to different audiences? Like, how do you evolve your talks based on the audience if you do that?
In general, I trust that people are able to understand and they're able to give value from my talks. So the conference is the one that is interested in having a good variety of entry-level, mid-level, and high-level talks. And in my case, and maybe I have specialized in high-level, difficult talks and everything else, and that's the stuff that I really enjoy, and I think that's the space that I can provide. But the conferences need the whole wide spectrum. So they need people like, this is the first time that I write an Android application. This was my experience. And people who are writing those frameworks that are working on the Android core or maybe, these foundational libraries, they need to know what is the experience for somebody that has just started, and this is a good way. Maybe you have a medium level talk when they say, we actually migrated from this framework to this other framework. That's a really common story, and in there you see how an organization went from one solution to another, and that's the stuff that they learn on the way. And maybe if you're gonna have that same problem, you're just gonna go through it. Or maybe you just want to have this really thick, programming or computer sciencey talk where you can just get that stuff, and that's when you call me.
What do you think is the most challenging part of giving a talk? The slides, the material, the presentation, get accepted to a conference?
I think the first couple of conferences that you get accepted, that first step is maybe the hardest. So I recommend people to start with something that is local. Many local meetups are really eager to get people in speaking, even if it's a short lightning round or lightning talk, or even you can do it internally within the company to build enough confidence. But bigger talks require more preparation, basically. You're gonna be preparing the slides, maybe you're a madman and you wanna do like live coding, or maybe you wanna audio visuals and everything else, and it's up to you to decide which one of those you're gonna be doing and what is the investment. So I've seen people that prepare the slides the night before and had like a great talk that everybody loved, and I see people that have spent 6 months working on it, and by the time it came, it was too refined, or people were not able to click on it.
Cool. So that's the end for that part. And now before we end it up, I would like Paco to talk with these people. Like you are in front of that audience, people that are starting their careers, or they are thinking to, you know, like how do they can advance their career. What are the advices that you would give to those people? And maybe that could be the advice that would you give to yourself when you were studying in that little town in Spain.
So get over yourself. You're one of many engineers that have been around. Many problems have already been solved. We're keeping iterating, we're finding harder problems, but many of those problems have actually been solved. So look around, find what other people are doing. And the third one is just put yourself out there. Interacting with people is really important. It gives you a lot in your career. It gives you a lot into personal development. It gives you a lot, like it's gonna find you better jobs and better places and more opportunities. This is important. Go talk to people. Don't isolate yourself. It's not all about the code. It's part about the people. It's part about the code. It's part about yourself. You have to make everything together so you can be happy and you can be doing these things and you can still get these, you know, good jobs and good projects and everything else. But it's about all of it, putting everything together.
That's a really good advice. Put it out of the room.
Exactly.
Take some sunlight. Talk to people. So thank you very much, Paco. That's the end. That's a wrap. Woo! Muy bien.
Yay! This is the end of this very long interview with Paco Esteve. I hope you found really interesting this interview. I had so much fun recording it with Paco. If you want us to keep producing this type of content, please consider donating. That will help us a lot. I have a question for you. What other people we should interview? Just let us know in the contact, or maybe on YouTube or on social network, Depths in Depth. Next week, we are going to have a very interesting profile, a CTO of a company that I really love. Who do you think is going to be? That's all. Just share with your friends, subscribe, follow us on social networks, all of that stuff. So see you very soon. Ciao.